The rain was light that evening, but it felt heavy on her shoulders. She stood outside the small house she had once called home, holding a thin bag with a few clothes inside. Her hands were shaking, not from the cold, but from the fear growing inside her. She was pregnant, alone, and had nowhere to go. Just a few hours earlier, she had believed things could still be fixed. Now, the door behind her was closed for good. She had always lived a quiet life. Nothing fancy, nothing dramatic. She worked small jobs, saved what little she could, and tried to stay out of trouble. People around her knew her as calm and respectful. She didn't talk much, but she listened carefully. Even when life was hard, she never complained. When she found out she was pregnant, she sat alone for a long time, staring at the wall. Her first feeling was fear, but not because she didn't want the baby. She was scared of how people would react. She knew the questions would come. Who was the father? Why wasn't he around? Why was she hiding the truth? She decided early on that she would not speak about the baby's father. Not to friends. Not to family. Not to anyone. It wasn't because she felt ashamed. It was because she had made a promise to herself. Some truths, she believed, were not meant to be spoken too soon. At first, people tried to act normal. They offered fake smiles and quiet advice. But slowly, the looks changed. Whispers followed her wherever she went. Some people judged her without even knowing her story. Others looked at her with pity, which hurt even more. Inside the house, the arguments became louder. Words that were once kind turned sharp. She was told she had brought shame. She was told she was irresponsible. Every time they asked about the father, she stayed silent. That silence made them angrier. One evening, after another long argument, she was told to leave. No shouting this time, just cold voices and hard eyes. They said she was no longer welcome there. They said she could not stay under their roof with a child whose father she refused to name. She didn't beg. She didn't cry in front of them. She simply nodded, picked up her bag, and walked out. The door closed behind her, and with it, the life she had known. As she walked down the street, memories rushed through her mind. She remembered happier days, when she laughed without fear and believed life would always move forward gently. She remembered the moment she met the man who would later become the baby's father. Back then, she never imagined things would end this way. He had come into her life quietly, just like she had. He was kind, careful with his words, and always seemed to carry the weight of the world on his shoulders. Their connection grew slowly. There were no big promises, no dramatic moments, just long talks, shared dreams, and quiet understanding. But his world was very different from hers. She knew it even then. He lived behind walls she could not enter. Responsibilities she could not fully understand followed him everywhere. When she learned she was pregnant, she knew her life would change forever. She also knew his would. That was when she made her choice. She would protect the child, no matter what it cost her. She would not use his name for safety or comfort. She would carry the burden alone if she had to. Now, standing alone under the dark sky, she placed a hand on her stomach. The baby moved slightly, reminding her she was not truly alone. She whispered softly, promising the child that she would find a way. Even if the world had turned its back on her, she would not turn her back on her baby. She didn't know where she would sleep that night. She didn't know how she would earn money tomorrow, but she knew one thing clearly: she would survive. Not because she was strong by nature, but because she had no other choice. As she walked forward, her steps slow but steady, fate was already preparing a path she could not yet see. The silence she carried was heavy, but it was also powerful. And though she had been thrown away while pregnant, her story was far from over. That first night after being thrown out felt longer than any night she had ever known. She walked until her legs hurt, stopping only when the pain in her lower back became too strong to ignore. The streets were quieter than usual, but every sound felt louder to her. A passing car, distant voices. Even the wind made her heart beat faster. She finally sat on a bench near a closed shop, pulling her thin shawl tighter around herself. Sleep did not come easily. Her mind kept replaying the moment the door closed behind her. She wondered how people who once shared meals with her could turn so cold so quickly. Still, she did not regret staying silent. By morning, hunger reminded her that life would not pause for her pain. She stood up slowly, feeling dizzy for a moment, then steadied herself. She needed food, work, and a place to rest. Most of all, she needed hope. She spent the day walking from one place to another, asking for small jobs. Cleaning, washing dishes, organizing shelves, anything that did not require long hours or heavy lifting. Some people turned her away as soon as they noticed her pregnancy. Others looked at her with doubt, as if her condition made her weak or unreliable. Late in the afternoon, a woman at a small food place offered her leftover bread and tea. It was not much, but it felt like kindness. She thanked her with a soft smile, holding back tears. That simple moment reminded her that not everyone in the world was cruel. As days passed, she found a temporary place to sleep in a shared shelter. It was crowded and noisy, but it was warm. She kept to herself, speaking only when necessary. The questions always came sooner or later. Why was she alone? Where was the baby's father? Every time she answered the same way, she said nothing. Some people respected her silence. Others grew suspicious. A few tried to pressure her, saying she could get more help if she just told the truth. She listened quietly, then walked away. She had learned that words could be dangerous when spoken to the wrong people. Her body was changing fast. Simple tasks left her tired. Some mornings, she felt sick before she could even stand up. She worried constantly about the baby. Was she eating enough? Was the stress harming the child? She used what little money she earned to buy basic food and vitamins when she could. Many nights, she went to sleep hungry so the baby would not have to. She talked to the child softly, telling stories, sharing dreams of a better future. Those quiet moments gave her strength. Sometimes memories returned without warning. She remembered the baby's father sitting across from her, serious and thoughtful. She remembered how careful he always was, how he spoke about responsibility and consequences. She wondered if he ever thought about her now. She pushed those thoughts away. Thinking about him only made things harder. Whatever happened in the past was already done. What mattered was the life growing inside her. One evening, after a long day of work, she felt a sharp pain in her side. It passed quickly, but fear stayed behind. She realized she could not keep ignoring her health. She needed proper care. But that required money she did not have. A volunteer at the shelter noticed her condition and quietly suggested a local clinic. The services were limited, but they could at least check on the baby. The next morning, she went there, her hands shaking as she waited. The doctor was kind but honest. She needed rest, less stress, better food. The advice felt heavy, knowing how difficult it would be to follow. Still, hearing the baby's heartbeat filled her with relief. Tears rolled down her face as she thanked the doctor. Words slowly spread among the shelter staff about her situation. Some people treated her more gently. Others watched her closely, trying to connect her to rumors they had heard. She stayed alert, careful not to share too much. Meanwhile, far away from her small, struggling world, something unexpected was happening. A private investigation had begun, searching for a woman who once disappeared without explanation. Details were limited, but the urgency was clear. She knew nothing of this. All she knew was survival. One rainy night, she sat near the shelter entrance, watching the water fall from the sky. She placed her hand on her stomach again, feeling a soft movement. A small smile appeared on her face. Despite everything, the baby was strong. She whispered that she would keep going, that no matter how many doors closed, she would find another way. The world had tested her silence, but it had not broken her yet. And somewhere beyond her sight, the past she tried so hard to protect was slowly moving closer to her present. Days turned into weeks. And the reality of her situation began to settle deeper into her bones. She had grown careful with every step, every word, every interaction. Survival was no longer about just finding food or shelter. It was about staying unnoticed while keeping the baby safe. She had learned that the world could be both cruel and indifferent, and it was up to her to navigate it alone. The shelter had become her temporary world, a place where she could rest without fear of being thrown out again. She had made small friends among the other residents, women who understood hardship because they had lived it themselves. They did not pry into her past. They offered support without judgment, which she valued more than words could express. She found a routine. Mornings began with the clinic visit for checkups when necessary. Days were spent taking small jobs for anyone willing to hire her. Evenings were for preparing simple meals and resting as much as her body allowed. At night, she would talk softly to the baby, imagining a life filled with safety, love, and laughter. Despite the routine, fear never fully left her. Every new face could be someone with questions, someone who would force her to reveal the secret she protected fiercely. She had learned to smile politely and walk away. Her silence was her shield, her only protection from being judged or exposed. One day, she came across a small bookstore that needed help sorting deliveries. The work was light, indoors, and paid better than the other jobs she had found. The owner, a quiet man with kind eyes, noticed her condition, but did not ask unnecessary questions. Instead, he offered her steady hours, enough to start saving for a future that felt almost impossible to imagine. The baby continued to grow inside her, reminding her every day of her purpose. She felt tiny kicks, hiccups, and stretches, each one a small miracle. At night, she would close her eyes and imagine the life she hoped to give her child, a life filled with respect, love, and freedom from fear. But the world outside her small sanctuary was never quiet. Rumors about a missing woman began to circulate in distant circles. Certain individuals were searching, asking questions, and following leads. She remained unaware, focused on survival, her silence keeping her hidden for now. Occasionally, she would catch herself thinking about the man she had kept silent about. She remembered his gentle voice, the way he spoke about life and responsibility, and the promise of safety that now felt like a distant dream. She had chosen silence to protect them both, and though it hurt, she never regretted it. Winter arrived, bringing bitter cold and new challenges. Finding warm clothes and staying healthy became difficult. She learned to layer old clothing, borrow blankets, and seek out warmer corners in public buildings. The harsh weather made people less patient and more suspicious, but she continued to push forward, determined to survive. One afternoon, while delivering books from a shipment, she noticed a young girl watching her from across the street. The girl had wide, curious eyes, and when their gazes met, she felt a strange sense of connection. The girl waved hesitantly, and for a moment the woman almost waved back. Then she remembered the danger of attention and turned away quickly. Continuing her work life in the shelter was not without moments of hope. Some nights they would share stories around a small heater, laugh quietly, and forget for a while that the world outside was harsh. In these moments, she allowed herself to dream. She imagined a home for her child, a place filled with warmth and security, where laughter could flow freely without fear. As the pregnancy progressed, her body grew heavier and her movements slower. Tasks that were once easy became painful. She discovered the strength she never knew she had, rising every morning despite exhaustion, fear, and pain. The baby's life gave her resilience, reason to continue when it would have been easier to give up. She started noticing subtle changes in people around her. Small acts of kindness from strangers, hand-offering food, a warm smile, a quiet acknowledgement reminded her that not everyone was cruel. These moments were rare, but they became precious lifelines. She had no idea that her past was slowly catching up to her. Some people were determined to find her, not out of malice, but out of curiosity, obligation, or a sense of responsibility. Little did she know that a turning point was approaching, one that would change everything she had struggled to maintain. One evening, she returned to the shelter after a long day at the bookstore. The sky was painted in shades of orange and purple. She paused, placing her hands on her belly, feeling the baby shift as if acknowledging her presence. Tears of both relief and exhaustion streamed down her face. She whispered promises she hoped to keep, vowing to protect and love the child no matter the obstacles. In the quiet of that moment, she realized something important. Her life, though filled with uncertainty and struggle, had a purpose greater than fear or judgment. Every step she took, every silent choice she made, was leading her closer to a future she could shape. A future where her child could grow without the weight of shame or secrecy, and though she did not yet know what would come next, she held on to hope. Hope that one day she would find a place where both she and her baby could live with dignity, free from fear and surrounded by those who truly cared. Until that day arrived, she would continue forward, step by step. Carrying her child and her secret with quiet determination, time moved slowly, yet the days seemed to blur together. The woman had grown stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. Every day brought a new challenge, but also a reminder that she had survived so much already. She had learned to navigate life with caution, to trust her instincts, and to protect her secret fiercely. The baby inside her was growing steadily, a quiet miracle that gave her the courage to keep moving forward. Her routine became both her comfort and her discipline. Mornings were for quiet reflection and stretching, preparing herself for the physical demands of her work and the emotional weight of her situation. She would whisper to the baby, telling little stories about the world, about hope, and about the strength that resided in both of them. These moments, though small, were her anchor. At the bookstore, she had become more than just an employee. The owner noticed her reliability, her careful attention to detail, and her quiet determination. He did not pry into her personal life, but he offered small gestures of support, a cup of tea on cold mornings, a warm blanket when she shivered, and kind words that lifted her spirits. The small acts of kindness reminded her that trust could be found even in unexpected places. Despite the progress she had made, danger and uncertainty never fully left her. There were still moments when she felt watched, when the fear of discovery gnawed at her from the inside. Every question about the father, every sideways glance, reminded her of the secret she carried. She had become skilled at reading people, at sensing when curiosity turned to judgment. Silence had become her shield, and she wielded it carefully. Winter had hardened the streets, but it had also hardened her resolve. She learned to find warmth in the smallest places, to navigate the crowded shelters and busy streets without drawing attention. She had grown skilled at moving through life without being noticed, yet always alert to the needs of the child she carried. The baby's movements became her motivation, her reason to endure each day. One day, a woman at the shelter quietly approached her with news of a community program that helped expecting mothers in need. The program offered medical care, food assistance, and counseling. She listened carefully, weighing the risks and benefits. Trusting strangers was difficult, but she recognized that she could not face everything alone. She decided to join, taking cautious steps toward receiving help without revealing more than necessary. The program became a lifeline. She received medical checkups, nutritious food, and guidance on prenatal care. More importantly, she found people who listened without judgment, who respected her choices, and who offered genuine support. It was a reminder that the world was not entirely harsh, that kindness could exist even in difficult circumstances. Yet life outside her immediate world continued to shift. People who had once been part of her life began to search for her, following leads and trying to uncover the woman who had disappeared. She remained unaware of the growing interest, focused entirely on survival and the safety of her child. Her silence protected them both, and she clung to it as a shield against the world. The days grew longer, the nights colder, and her body heavier. She struggled with exhaustion, hunger, and pain, yet she refused to let despair take hold. She found strength in small victories a day without illness, a meal for herself and the baby, a kind word from a stranger. Each victory reminded her that life, despite its hardships, was still moving forward. One evening, while walking home from the program, she saw a man standing across the street, looking in her direction. Something about him made her heart race, a mix of fear and recognition. She quickly turned, her instincts telling her to avoid attention. The encounter lasted only a few seconds, but it left her unsettled. She could not shake the feeling that change was approaching, that the past she had tried to hide was beginning to catch up. Back at the shelter, she confided in one of the older women, a quiet resident who had become a friend. The woman listened carefully as she described the encounter, nodding with understanding. Sometimes, the older woman said, the past has a way of finding us. But remember, you have already survived so much. You are stronger than you realize. Her words lingered with the woman as she prepared for bed. She thought about the journey she had taken, from being cast out and alone to finding small pieces of stability and hope. The road had been long and filled with obstacles, yet she had endured. She realized that her strength was not in avoiding hardship, but in facing it head-on, step by step. Days turned into weeks, and she could feel the baby moving more vigorously. Each kick, each hiccup, was a reminder that life persisted even in the harshest conditions. She began preparing for the child's arrival, gathering small items, clothes, and essentials whenever she could. She did so quietly, keeping her plans private, yet each action filled her with a sense of purpose and anticipation. Then, one morning, an unexpected visitor arrived at the shelter. A man with an air of authority and a careful gaze asked to speak with her privately. She felt a surge of fear, her instincts warning her to stay silent and cautious. The man introduced himself as someone looking for her, someone with a connection to her past. She listened carefully, weighing every word, every gesture. The conversation was brief, but intense. He asked questions about her well-being, the pregnancy, and her living situation. She answered with minimal words, offering only what was necessary. Her heart raced, but she remained calm, determined to protect the secret she had carried so long. After he left, she felt a mix of relief and anxiety. The encounter confirmed what she had suspected, that her past was slowly approaching, and she would soon have to make difficult decisions. She returned to her routines, focusing on the baby, the work at the bookstore, and the support she received from the community program. Each day became a delicate balance between preparation and caution in the quiet of the night. She held her belly and whispered to the child, promising safety, love, and a future where fear would not dominate their lives. She knew challenges remained, but she also recognized the strength she had developed along the way. Every step she had taken, every silent choice she had made, had prepared her for the moment that was coming. The woman realized that, while the past might be approaching, it would not define them. She had built resilience, found allies, and nurtured the life inside her with care and dedication. Whatever lay ahead, she was determined to face it, knowing that the bond she shared with her child would give her the courage to overcome anything. The final weeks of her pregnancy were both the most difficult and the most illuminating. Every day brought physical strain, emotional tension, and the constant awareness that she was preparing for a life-altering event. Despite the hardships, she felt a sense of clarity and purpose she had never experienced before. Her focus was no longer just on survival, it was on the child and the life they would share together. She continued her work at the bookstore, careful not to overexert herself. The owner noticed her condition and offered small adjustments to her tasks, ensuring she could continue working without risking her health. His quiet support meant more than words could express. He never asked questions, never pressed her for details, but his kindness provided a steady foundation during a time of uncertainty. Outside of work, she spent her days preparing in small ways for the arrival of her child. She gathered basic necessities, cleaned the corners of her small living space, and set aside a few items she had acquired over time. Each action was done with care, as though she were already practicing motherhood, nurturing both her child and the life they would soon begin together. The shelter had become more than a temporary refuge. The people there, women who had experienced their own struggles, had become a surrogate family. They shared meals, advice, and small moments of laughter. Some had children of their own, and their stories of motherhood offered both comfort and guidance. She listened quietly, absorbing what she could, while still keeping the secret of her baby's father locked away. Despite these small moments of stability, a shadow of uncertainty loomed. The world outside remained unpredictable. She had felt the presence of those searching for her. The brief visit from the man who seemed connected to her past, she knew that her carefully constructed world could be disrupted at any moment. Yet she refused to let fear dictate her actions. She had come too far and endured too much to let the unknown control her life. One rainy afternoon, while resting on a bench outside the shelter, she felt a sharp pain in her lower abdomen. She stood quickly, clutching her belly, her heart racing. She knew this was a sign that the baby's arrival was imminent. Panic threatened to take hold, but she steadied herself. She had prepared as best as she could, and now it was time to face the final challenge. The shelter staff acted quickly, calling a nearby hospital and arranging for transport. As she was guided into the car, she held tightly to the bag with her few belongings and whispered reassurances to her baby. The journey was tense, but she remained focused, determined to protect the child and herself through every contraction. Every twist of fear at the hospital, medical staff took over with calm efficiency. She was terrified, yet strangely at peace. The baby was almost here, and soon she would see the face of the life she had carried with such care and dedication. Every struggle, every moment of isolation, every hardship she had faced led to this moment. Hours passed. Pain ebbed and flowed, but she held on to the hope that had sustained her through so much. Finally, with a combination of determination and support from the medical team, her baby was born. The first cries echoed in the room, a sound she would never forget. Tears streamed down her face as she held her child for the first time. The small, fragile being looked up at her with wide, innocent eyes. And she knew that all her sacrifices had been worth it. In that quiet hospital room, she felt a profound sense of relief and love. She had faced rejection, hardship, and uncertainty, yet she had emerged stronger. Her baby was healthy, and for the first time she felt a sense of stability she had never known. She whispered softly, promising protection, love, and a life free from the shadows of fear and judgment. The days following the birth were filled with adjustment, learning, and small joys. She learned to care for the baby, balancing exhaustion with the delight of new life. She marveled at each tiny movement, each soft coo, and the way the baby's eyes seemed to study her with curiosity. These moments reinforced her belief that she had the strength to provide a nurturing, loving environment despite the difficulties she had faced in the midst of this new chapter. She remained cautious about the world beyond the hospital. She knew the man connected to her past might reappear, and she had to protect both herself and her child. Yet the fear that had once dominated her life no longer held power. She had faced the ultimate challenge and had survived. And she now carried the most precious reward of her journey. Time slowly settled into a gentle rhythm. She continued to work at the bookstore, cared for her baby, and maintained her silence about the father, knowing it was both her shield and her choice. The community around her, the friends from the shelter, and the quiet support of those who had never asked questions gave her a sense of security she had never imagined possible. Looking back, she realized that her journey had been defined not just by hardship, but by resilience, courage, and unwavering dedication to the life she nurtured within her. Every act of strength, every silent choice had brought her to this moment. She had been thrown away while pregnant, but she had reclaimed her life, protected her child, and carved a path toward a future filled with hope. As she held her baby close, she whispered once more, a promise that would carry through the years, that no matter what challenges lay ahead, she would remain steadfast, nurturing, and protective. The world might have rejected her, but she had found love, strength, purpose in the quiet bond between mother and child. And in that bond, she knew they could face anything together. Life after the birth of her child was a mix of joy, exhaustion, and cautious hope. Every morning she would wake to the gentle coos of her baby. And for a moment, all the fear and hardship of the past seemed to fade. Holding the small, fragile being in her arms, she felt a bond so deep it defied words. This child was the culmination of her struggles, the living proof of her strength and resilience. The first few weeks were the hardest. Sleep was a luxury she could no longer take for granted. The baby demanded constant attention, feeding, and care. She learned to navigate this new life with patience, discovering instincts she never knew she possessed. Despite the fatigue, every smile, every tiny movement from the child reinforced her sense of purpose. She continued working at the bookstore, adjusting her schedule to fit the demands of motherhood. The owner remained supportive, offering flexibility and understanding. The work provided more than just income. It offered her a connection to the world beyond the shelter and a sense of normalcy in the midst of an otherwise chaotic life. The community around her also played a crucial role. Friends from the shelter, women who had faced their own hardships, offered advice, shared meals, and occasionally babysat so she could rest or work. Their presence reminded her that she was not entirely alone, that even in a world that had once rejected her, she could find care and solidarity. As weeks turned into months, she noticed subtle changes in herself and her surroundings. Her confidence grew. She began to believe that she could provide a stable, loving environment for her child despite the uncertainty that still lingered. She taught the baby small things: smiles, coos, the comfort of a soft touch hand, marveled at the rapid growth and curiosity in those innocent eyes. One evening, as she rocked the baby to sleep, she thought about the man connected to her past. She had chosen silence all these months, and that decision had protected them both. Yet the thought of him occasionally brought a quiet ache, a reminder that some parts of life were left unresolved. She had no intention of exposing her secret. Not yet, and perhaps not ever. It was hers to guard. A personal boundary she had carefully maintained. Her days were filled with simple routines: feeding, changing, walking with the baby, managing the household, and working. Each task, no matter how small, became a meditation in resilience and love. The world outside remained unpredictable, but inside their small home, a sense of security and warmth was steadily growing. One afternoon, while walking through a park, she noticed other parents with their children. Some smiled at her and the baby, others merely observed from a distance. She felt a mix of envy and hope. Envy for those who had always had support, and hope that one day her child could grow without the shadows of fear and judgment that had marked her own life. She began to dream of a future. For her child's education, friends, laughter, and experiences that were denied to her own youth. Every coin saved, every moment of care, was a brick in the foundation she was building for this life. She was determined that her baby would never feel the sense of rejection and abandonment that she had endured. As the seasons changed, she faced new challenges. Illnesses, financial shortages, and unexpected disruptions tested her daily. Yet each time she was confronted with difficulty, she relied on the skills and resilience she had honed over the past months. Her mind was disciplined, her heart focused, and her determination unwavering. She knew that fear and hardship could no longer control her actions. Slowly, whispers from the past began to reach her again. People were searching, trying to reconnect the threads of her life. She remained cautious, avoiding unnecessary attention and maintaining her carefully constructed privacy. Still, the presence of these whispers reminded her that while the past could not define her, it remained a reality she could not entirely ignore. Despite this, she allowed herself moments of joy. Small outings with the baby, walks in the park, simple meals enjoyed together, and quiet nights filled with stories and soft lullabies. Each moment was a celebration of survival, love, and the quiet triumph of forging a life against all odds. The baby grew healthy and strong, a testament to her careful nurturing and unwavering dedication. She marveled at each milestone: the first smile, first reach for a toy, the tiny, determined steps that hinted at independence. Each achievement was a reminder that despite the world's cruelty, life could flourish under care and love. She also began to consider the future beyond immediate survival. Plans for education, work, and a safe home became more concrete. She explored community resources, connected with supportive neighbors, slowly expanded the network of people who could help without asking intrusive questions. It was a delicate balance, maintaining privacy while ensuring security. But she managed with patience and resolve. One quiet night, holding the baby close, she reflected on her journey. From being cast out while pregnant, navigating the harsh realities of life alone, to finally holding a thriving child in her arms, she recognized the depth of her own strength. She understood that love, perseverance. An unwavering care had carried them through the darkest times. She whispered promises to her baby once more, promises of safety, protection, love, and a future unburdened by the mistakes and judgments of others. She understood that life would continue to present challenges, but she also knew that together they could face anything. The bond they shared was unbreakable, a silent testimony to resilience and the power of maternal love. As the night deepened and the baby slept peacefully, she allowed herself a rare moment of contentment. The path had been long and arduous, but she had survived, nurtured, and protected. The child in her arms was not just a new life, but a new beginning, a chance to rewrite the story with hope, courage, and love at its core. And in that quiet embrace, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. With unwavering strength and the unshakable certainty of their bond, life continued to unfold in small, deliberate steps, each one reinforcing the resilience and determination she had cultivated over the months. Her days were filled with the careful balance of caring for her child, managing work at the bookstore, and navigating the subtle complexities of a world that was at once dangerous and full of unexpected kindness. The baby had grown noticeably, becoming more active and expressive. Each milestone, first laugh, first crawl, first attempts at speaking, was a vivid reminder of the life she had fought to protect. She cherished these moments quietly, finding joy in the ordinary acts of parenting that had once seemed unattainable. Holding the child in her arms, she felt the weight of the past lighten, replaced with a sense of purpose and connection she had never known before. She had also begun to think more seriously about long-term stability. Temporary shelters and makeshift arrangements could only carry her so far. She began exploring options for safer housing, researching affordable apartments, and seeking out trustworthy landlords. Every step required careful judgment. She could not risk drawing attention to herself or exposing the secret of the child's father. Patience and caution had become second nature. Work at the bookstore remained her anchor. The routine of sorting books, assisting customers, and organizing inventory provided a semblance of normalcy in a life that had been anything but ordinary. The owner's quiet support continued, his subtle gestures a reminder that kindness could exist even in the most ordinary of settings. Sometimes he would offer advice. Other times, he would simply smile, acknowledging her perseverance without the need for words. The community around her had grown cautiously supportive. Other parents, women who had endured hardship, and neighbors who had observed her resilience offered advice, shared resources, and occasionally provided temporary childcare. These connections were invaluable, giving her the freedom to work and rest, while also reminding her that she did not have to face the world entirely alone. Even with these supports, challenges persisted. Illnesses, financial setbacks, and bureaucratic obstacles tested her patience and resourcefulness. On one occasion, an unexpected medical emergency required immediate attention, and she had to navigate the hospital system alone. Her determination and clear thinking allowed her to manage the situation, ensuring her child's safety while advocating for necessary care. These experiences reinforced her confidence in her own abilities and deepened the bond with her child. Amid these trials, she discovered unexpected moments of joy. A walk in the park on a sunny afternoon, a visit to the library where her child's curiosity was sparked, or a shared laugh with a fellow parent. These simple experiences became treasures in her otherwise demanding life. She learned to savor these moments, understanding that happiness often existed in small, fleeting forms. At night, she would sit by the window, holding her child close, and reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. From being thrown out while pregnant, enduring months of uncertainty, to finally holding a thriving child, she recognized the strength and resilience that had carried her through. She whispered promises of protection, love, and a future free from fear, embedding these commitments in her heart as deeply as she cradled the baby in her arms, while she focused on building a stable life. The distant echoes of the past occasionally reached her. There were subtle signs, a letter, a message, or a visit from someone connected to earlier events that reminded her that her choices and the secret she kept remained significant. She approached these moments with caution, knowing that careful navigation was necessary to maintain the safety and stability she had fought to establish. The child's growth brought new responsibilities and joys. Teaching first words, encouraging early steps, and sharing discoveries about the world around them became daily exercises in patience and love. Each success reinforced her belief that despite adversity, life could be nurtured, guided, and celebrated. The sense of agency she felt in shaping her child's early experiences provided a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. Financially, she continued to save diligently, understanding that stability required foresight and discipline. Every coin saved, every careful decision made about expenses was a step toward ensuring that her child would have a secure future. She also explored educational opportunities for herself, recognizing that personal growth and knowledge would enhance her ability to provide a better life. As the months progressed, she became increasingly aware of the subtle power of community and human connection. Small acts of kindness, a shared meal, a moment of advice, a simple smile had a cumulative effect, creating a network of support that bolstered her independence. She learned to balance self-reliance with openness to help, understanding that vulnerability could coexist with strength. One particularly quiet evening, as she rocked her child to sleep, she reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred. The journey from being abandoned to building a life defined by resilience, love, and quiet determination had been arduous, yet profoundly enlightening. She realized that her experiences had forged a capacity for empathy, patience, and courage that she might never have discovered otherwise. The future remained uncertain, as it always had been. Yet, for the first time, she felt a genuine sense of control over her own destiny. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she also knew that the bond she shared with her child, her determination, and the lessons she had learned would guide her through any obstacle in the quiet intimacy of her home. She made silent vows to herself and her child. She promised to nurture curiosity, foster independence, and instill confidence. She vowed to protect the child from the judgment and cruelty that had once overshadowed her own life. Most importantly, she promised to continue growing alongside the child, learning, adapting, and embracing the journey with courage and love. As she closed her eyes that night, her child nestled safely in her arms. She felt a profound sense of peace. The world might still be unpredictable, and the past might still linger, but she had created a sanctuary of love, stability, and hope. In this space, she and her child could thrive, face challenges, and experience the joy and wonder of life together. And in that quiet, unwavering bond, she knew they were prepared to meet whatever the future held together.